Welcome everyone to the completely free Azure Fundamentals AZ-900 course. My name is Sullivan. I'm an AZ-900 certified. I hold multiple certifications across the IT industry, and I'm going to be your instructor for this completely free Azure Fundamental course. Today we're on day 6, and we're going to learn about Azure Storage Services. So in today's lecture, we're going to focus on describing Azure Storage Services. After completing this day, you're going to be able to compare Azure Storage Services. You will be able to describe storage tiers. You will be able to describe redundancy options. You will be able to describe the storage account options and the storage types. Also, you will be able to identify options for moving files, including AZ copy, Azure Storage Explorer, and Azure File Syncs. And one of the biggest things is that you're going to be able to describe migration options, including Azure Migrate and Azure Data Box. Azure Storage Services. This is basically a scalable, secure, and highly durable cloud storage solution. Think about you have your physical stuff, but now it's stored into the cloud, into Azure, specifically cloud storage. So we're going to be talking about all the different types of storages. These are the primary services for our AZ-900 that we have to know. And the first one is Azure Blob Storage, Azure Files, Azure Queue Storage, Azure Table Storage, and Azure Disk Storage, which I'm going to describe one by one in the next slides. Azure Blob Storage is utilized for object storage for unstructured data. Remember this for your AZ-900. Images, videos, text, binary files, and it uses containers. They're similar to folders that store blobs. Remember this for your certification. Azure Files are managed file shares in the cloud that use the industry standard. And this is SMB, which is Service Message Block, or NFS, the new file system protocols. They're great for replacing on-premises file service. For example, you store your data on-premises. Now with Azure Files, you can move all those files into the cloud. We also have something called Azure Queue Storage, and this is a service for storing large numbers of messages. It typically includes the use to build flexible, scalable applications by allowing components to communicate asynchronously. Remember these keywords right here are flexible, scalable, and they are useful for storing messages. Remember this for your certification. Azure Table Storage is a non-SQL, keyword right here, non-SQL, key attribute data store that holds large amounts of structured, non-relational data. Remember keywords right here, non-SQL, and it's also amounts of structured, non-relational data. Finally, we have Azure Disk Storage, and think about Azure Disk Storage like a physical hard drive, but virtual hard drives that are designed for like virtual machines. This is specifically designed for virtual machines. So the term we have here is that Azure Disk Storage provides persistent virtualized block storage volumes like physical hard drives that attach to Azure virtual machines. So now that we know what the definition of every storage service is, what the AZ-900 wants us to do is to be able to compare cloud storage services. So I created this chart for you. I recommend you pausing the video and then writing this down, this chart, so you can see the comparisons of every storage and when it's best used for the underlying structure and the protocols that is going to be used for every storage service. We're going to be able to describe storage tiers, and for this I didn't want to show text. I want to show you with an image, and there's 4 storage tiers that we should know. I'm going to go in detail after this slide, but basically the 4 storage tiers are hot, which are for high performance and immediate access. Warm, they frequently access, quick retrieval. And then you have cold storage, that's infrequently access or lower cost. And then the archive storage, which will be for long retention and lower cost. The hot tier storage type is optimized for frequently accessed data. It has the highest storage cost, but the lowest access cost. So think about this. This is data that I want to access quick, and it's immediately available for use. We also have the cool tier, and this is optimized for infrequently accessed data. It's usually stored for at least 30 days. It has a lower storage cost, but a higher access cost. Remember this, the data will be stored for at least 30 days, and the cost will be lower, but the higher access cost will be higher. We also have the cold tier, And this is going to be used for early access data that it still requires fast retrieval. Usually we're going to be storing data for at least 90 days. So remember the days for your AZ-900. So this will be data that will be stored for 90 days, at least 90 days. The last storage tier is the archive tier. And this is an offline tier for early access data. It's stored for at least a minimum of 180 days. And this has the lowest storage cost, but it has the highest retrieval latency. Can take hours to rehydrate, and rehydration means that I'm going to be pulling the data back. So if you see the term rehydrate, it means that I'm pulling data back. One of the things for your Azure certification is you must be able to describe redundancy options. And we have 4 redundancy options that should be covered under AZ-900. And the first one is the LRS, the locally redundant storage. Second is the CRS, Sun redundant storage. Third one, GRS, geo redundant storage. And the last one is GCRS, the GeoZone redundant storage, which we're going to go one by one on what they are. Our first one is the LRS, local redundant storage. And this basically replicates data 3 times within a single physical data center in the primary region. What I recommend you for your AZ-900 to remember is that LRS replicates data 3 times. And then also recommend that in the primary region. So these are keywords for remember for your AZ-900. We also have the Sun redundant storage, and this basically replicates data synchronously across 3 distinct Azure availability zones. I highlighted 3 distinct Azure availability zones just for you to remember on your certification. But basically they're going to be replicated in the primary region. And this is going to ensure that the data availability, even if an entire facility fails, so you're going to have availability in 3 different availability zones. Remember this for your certification. Geo redundant storage. This basically combines LRS, which is the local redundant storage, in the primary region with asynchronous replication to a secondary region hundreds of miles away. It is going to be help you in protecting against regional disasters. And the way I can see for you to remember this for your certification is remember that this is going to combine LRS in the primary region with also asynchronous replication to a secondary region hundreds of miles away. So this is going to help you remember for your certification. GeoZone redundant storage, also known as GCRS, it replicates data across 3 availability zones in the primary region like the CRS and asynchronously to a secondary region. So basically a lot of people get confused between GRS and GCRS. The main difference is that GCRS is going to replicate data across 3 availability zones and also asynchronously to a secondary region. So this is going to combine 3 availability zones in the primary region and also 3 zones in the secondary region. What the AZ-900 wants us to be able to do is to describe a storage account options and the storage types. And we already went through all the storage types, which is the blob storage, Azure Files, Azure Queue Storage, Azure Table Storage, Azure Disk Storage. So we already went through all of those, but the main thing is the account options. So we have 2, which is the premium and the standard. And the premium basically is backed by SSDs. It offers the higher through output and lower latency. And the standard, this is backed by hard drives, regular hard drives, and it is designated for general purpose workloads and supports all 4 core storage services, the blob storage, the file, queue, and table. We need to be able to identify options for moving files, including AZ Copy, Azure Storage Explorer, and Azure File Sync. And on the next slide, we're going to be able to identify this with a chart that I created for you. So let's go to the next slide. So here's our chart. What I recommend you to do, pause the video and then copy and paste, like write this down, and then put it on comments or put it on your notes. So basically AZ Copy uses the command line interface, and this is high performance scripted bulk file transfer. Keywords to remember are that it's scripting, command line, bulk upload, and then the command prompt. Remember this. The Azure Storage Explorer is going to be using the graphical user interface or a desktop application, and it's going to be mainly used for visual management of Azure and storage contents. Think about drag and drop. So you're going to drag files around, and this is going to be using the GUI graphical desktop apps, or think about just drag and drop. And Azure File Sync, it uses a background service. Remember this for your AZ-900, and it synchronizes on-premises Windows file servers with Azure files. And remember this for your AZ-900 is used for Windows Server, on-premises sync, hybrid environments, and cloud tiering. We also want to be able to describe migration options, and this includes Azure Migrate and Azure Databox. Azure Migrate is basically a free centralized hub provided by Microsoft. It's designed to assess, plan, and execute the migration of on-premises infrastructure, such as applications and database, to the Azure cloud. So it's just a free migration plan that you can do to migrate from your on-premises infrastructure, like migrate your applications to the cloud. So it's some sort of migration. Finally, we have Azure Databox, and Azure Databox is a RUG appliance. It's designed to securely transfer massive amounts of data into or out of Microsoft Azure. So if I want to move big amounts of data, I would use Azure Databox. So Azure Databox is designed to move big amounts of data securely to the cloud. And here's the quick recap of what we learned today. And today we learned how to describe Azure storage services. We learned how to compare the Azure storage services. We described the storage tiers. We described redundancy options. We also described the storage account options and the storage account types. We identify options for moving files, including Azure Copy, Azure Storage Explorer, and Azure File Sync. And we also learned how to describe migration options, including Azure Migrate and Azure Databox. So if one of these dots that is on this slide wasn't clear, I recommend you pausing the video, going back to the whatever wasn't clear, and then rewatch for you to remember and keep these concepts in your brain. If you guys been watching this course, you guys already know that at the end of every day, we always do 5 to 10 practice questions just to verify and make sure that what we learn is on our brain, and then we can implement it in like multiple or different types of questions. So let's start with our word questions. So here we are with question number 1. And question number 1 says, which Azure storage service is specifically designed to store massive amounts of unstructured data, such as videos, images, and documents? Remember, when I talk about unstructured data, I'm usually referring to Azure Blob Storage. Remember this for your certification. And Blob Storage is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured data, like text or binary data. Question number 2. An organization needs to create a cloud-based file share that can be accessed via the industry standard service message protocol. Which service should they use? Remember, guys, if I'm talking about service message protocol, or also another protocol called NFS, new file system, I'm usually referring to files. So if I see questions related to stuff that is like that, it's going to be Azure Files. And Azure Files, what they allow me to do, Azure Files offers fully managed file shares in the cloud that are accessible via the service message block, or also remember NFS, new file system. Question number 3. Which storage tier is the most effective for data that is rarely accessed and can tolerate retrieval latency of several hours? Keywords right here on this question. Remember, there's always 3 questions. So that is rarely accessed. So data that are rarely accessed and can tolerate a retrieval latency of several hours, that's archive tier. And the archive tier has the lowest storage cost, but the highest cost and retrieval latency. So when I archive data, like for example, is data that I'm not going to be able to use, like I just want to have it stored. So it will take, if I want to pull that data out of the archive tier, it's going to take a lot of time just because it was the way it was stored. It was stored to be stored in long times. Question number 4. Which redundancy option replicates your data 3 times within a single data center in the primary region? Remember, I talk about this. I talk about like when I replicate data 3 times. And usually I'm referring to LRS. And LRS is the lowest cost redundancy option and protects against this or rack failure within one data center. But LRS basically replicates my data 3 times on a single data center in the primary region. Remember this for your certification, guys. This is important to you guys to remember. Okay, question number 5. If you want to protect your storage account data against a complete data center failure within a region, which redundancy level should you choose? So we have out here, we have multiple redundancy options. I can do process of elimination, and I can eliminate basic storage and also cold storage, just because of the type of the storage. Like I want to be able to recover, like in case my data center failures. So what I would select, it will be the CRS. And the reason why I choose CRS over LRS, because LRS backups data 3 times in the same different availability zones, but in a single region. And CRS replicates your data across 3 different availability zones. 3 different availability zones. Where are we at? CRS replicates your data across 3 different availability zones in a single region, providing protection against data center outage. So for example, if something breaks, I have 3 different zones in the same region. Which tool is a command line utility used for high performance copying of data to and from Azure storage? So keywords right here, guys, I have command line utility. And remember, when I talk about command line utility, I'm usually referring to AZ copy. And AZ copy is a specialized command line tool designed for high performance of data movement in Azure storage. Azure portal, that would allow us to enter the portal. Azure Storage Explorer, that's not what we're looking for. And Azure PowerShell is for PowerShell stuff. So the only question right here is question number 6. So question number 7. Question number 7. Which GUI-based desktop application allows you to manage your Azure cloud storage resources across multiple subscriptions visually? What I'm gonna do for these questions, I'm gonna let you on the other side of the screen, let you choose. I know I've been saying that we're gonna do 5 to 10 questions every day, but basically we've been doing 10 questions every day. And today, what I want to do for these days is I want you to choose this question, try to figure out, put the answer on the comment, and we'll compare, and then give the explanation on why it is the question it is or why it's not. So for today, we're gonna do 6 questions, and then you're gonna do the 7, so it'll be 6, 7. Remember 6, 7, guys. So put the answer on the comments, and yeah, we'll compare on the comments. And as you guys know, I want to say congratulations. You made it to the end of day 6. Thank you for being so supportive for this channel. Thank you for watching this completely free Azure Fundamentals course. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. Help me subscribing, help me liking this video, help me sharing this course. And let's try to be the best course out there that is completely free. So help me with this, and thank you, and see you guys on the next day.